All right, everyone, we should be live. We'll have to make sure that's actually the case over on Rumble, of course. I do see that chat is working. Bana Lehman says first. Yes, indeed you are. Morgan Hevron says morning. Cam2425IA, Saturday Clank. Yes, of course. Of course, it's tax time, everyone. Now, I'm not into things being put in my ass, but the government is not going to give me a reach around when they decide to fuck me. So, yeah, it's fun when you get to the point where you make a decent income. You get a different perspective on how unfair the tax system really is, especially if you happen to be self-employed, because you get a 15% fucking penalty on the first 100K that you make. Yes, you get taxed at the rate that millionaires avoid because you don't have political connections. Saturday Sticks, yes, indeed. Yesterday, I did not do my live stream. I couldn't because there was no chance of me being able to do that. The baby was being fussy and not going out for the normal walk. Today, of course, we arranged things. So, King of Biltong, good morning from Antons in Roanoke, Texas. Hashtag Clank Nation. Excellent. Yeah, we've got a lot to cover today. First, from East Palestine, actually, there's an interesting article here with regards to dioxin contamination. And then going on through, of course, Biden's nurse story. I did cover it the other day. I was going to cover it yesterday, additionally, in the stream, but it's still, I think, newsworthy because it shows that he's cuckoo. And the legacy media non-reporting on that particular screed is probably even more interesting. Talking about world population and a bunch of other cool shit as well. So let me make sure that we're actually live over here. Let's see. Yes, indeed, we are live on Rumble with people pouring in like a tidal wave. That's the way I like to see it, of course. Nebraska Girl 71 says Clank. Landlord Harassment Channel over on... did you intentionally ignore my chat the other day? No, you can repost it, I suppose. My apologies there. Not exactly sure what you said. I probably didn't see it if it was towards the end. I did notice, I think that a super chat came in right after I disconnected. If that was yours, my apologies. Senile Zeke, Tim Pool complains, Andrew Tate injustice, but not Jay Sixers. I think that the Romanian legal system is a joke. And so I can sort of sympathize with that particular ethos. Andrew Tate, not necessarily the person I'm inclined to defend, but you can't claim that the Romanian justice system isn't a joke. He doesn't appear to have been officially charged with anything, and yet they're still detaining him. Now they're saying, I guess he has lung cancer of some sort. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, that might just be him trying to get a medical release to go back to Dubai or something like that. I'm not sure. I don't really keep up so much on that story. Yes, Morgan Hevron, Andrew Tate apparently claiming to have, when he was in Dubai or Qatar or one of the other, that he was diagnosed with possible lung cancer. He has a dark spot on his lungs. So I'm not sure what's happening. The Landlord Harassment Channel, I am facing a bogus eviction. Longtime fan, but I am asking your fans for all the help I can get right now. Details on my YouTube. Landlord Harassment Channel, you can go and visit that particular channel, and you can watch the videos therein. Yeah, Andrew Tate's a goofy dude, but everyone deserves the right of an actual fair trial. And if you haven't charged the person for an onerous length of time and you're holding them in a cramped Romanian prison cell, I don't think that you'd want to be in one. At some point, it becomes a little bit odd now, doesn't it? Grandpa Nurgle, judge me not by the color of my coffee, but by the content of my clank. I've got a nice, creamy, low acidity coffee, actually, from Dawa Egberts that I drink now. It's pretty good. All right, anyway, first news story. This is from The Guardian. Here's the real reason the EPA doesn't want to test for toxins in East Palestine. Yes, the EPA does not want to conduct any thorough testing of the contaminated soil in the East Palestine region, or places downwind or downriver. And this article explores why that's probably the case, and I happen to agree with it. The agency is familiar with dioxins, having researched its adverse effects, and if they test the soil in East Palestine for it, they will find it. Yes, when you burn up that much vinyl chloride, you will find that there's contamination that probably goes above legal limits. Here's the problem. It's a problem for the government. It's a problem for the EPA, of course, doing the testing in the first place. And it's a problem for one of their partners, Norfolk Southern. Of course, the government is tied at the hip with monopolistic corporations that they grant license to. The problem is that if you find an excessive amount of dioxins in the soil there or in the water supply, then you have to compensate people. You have to compensate thousands of home and landowners within that particular region, possibly further. I think that the reason why is, and this isn't stated in the article, but it's inferred, the real reason why is because of the scope of the disaster. It goes beyond East Palestine proper and into surrounding areas, especially downwind. You will find that the entire region has been contaminated. Now, how dangerous those contaminants are is up in the air. There are still studies about it today. It's not going to lead to 1 million cases of cancer, for example, but it could lead to enough of them that the EPA would have to step in and say, look, we have no choice but to compensate people for their property, leaving this region a ghost town. The only thing that'll be going on is the rail itself. The town itself has to be abandoned. It'll be like one of those coal towns where a coal seam fire starts and they say, look, we have to evacuate people because otherwise they're going to die in their sleep because of fumes, or their house suddenly catches fire or something like that. We can't maintain the infrastructure. In this case, you can maintain the infrastructure, but can you maintain a population in an area that's been irreversibly contaminated by enough dioxin or other contaminants? No, you can't. You'll have to compensate people. Effectively, the people of East Palestine are screwed, blued, and tattooed. What the government is doing in this case is angling to not test in order to have no official reason why they have to compensate over 4,000 homeowners within that region, as well as, again, possibly tens or hundreds of thousands of other people that are impacted. There was a case, it wasn't even that long ago, that one dioxin was found in around the Burlington High School, and it's not at concentrations that caused bronchitis or skin conditions or anything like that. No symptoms, no funny tasting water, no funny smelling air, but they found some chemical contaminants in the soil around the school. They condemned it. The school is going to be abandoned. They're building an entirely new school because of this. What would happen if you had to do that for this entire town? Well, that's a hefty amount to have to spend, especially when the EPA, of course, subjugate to the Biden administration, would have to come out and say, well, I know that we didn't respond for the first 2 weeks. We delayed FEMA funding and Biden hasn't even visited the area. But yeah, we're condemning all of these homes and we're going to have to pay through the nose in order to pay off the homeowners. We're sorry about your eventual leukemia kid cases and things like that. That's why they're not doing it. It's because of greed and because they don't want Norfolk Southern to become insolvent, because it would be a problem with the supply chain issues that they've already got, compounded by a major rail system having to go down because of bankruptcy. Probably be a problem now, wouldn't it, economically? They're only thinking about the Benji Greens, not about the people of East Palestine, largely because they all wear MAGA hats. Drexkin, keeping this vague due to tube rules. I agree with your earlier vid opinion of the hyperreaction of an entity years ago. That would be China. They had no clue which iteration had the oopsie, so they had to worst case scenario. Yes, I was talking about the lab leak theory specifically in one of my videos. I'm glad you agree. Andrew Tate, I'm a goofy dude. Not actually Andrew Tate. He's in a Romanian prison and has someone else tweeting for him sporadically. Sparky, happy Saturday, Sticks. Yes, a very happy Saturday. Maybe I should bring back weekend streams. It's just that the news doesn't update as much on weekends. The Landlord Harassment Channel. Thanks, Sticks. My Cash App is listed under my videos. Alexander McQueen. Were there any political predictions that you got wrong? Well, the margin in 2022 I was wrong on. And of course, if you fix for the shenanigans that went on with Kevin McCarthy and others, I wasn't. I will note that. But yeah, the margin I got wrong. I just did really well on the individual races. Nuclear Taco. Thanks for being my morning show during work. It would be boring without you. Thank you very much. Joe Smith. Do you think Fetterman is dead? No, but I think that he is mentally incapacitated and needs to be removed from the Senate. Quite clearly. The Patriot Chiro, East Palestine sees influx of Californians moving to area to seek better quality of life. Yeah, I mean, it would be an upgrade, I suppose. At least you don't have to live in the pod. You know, that 5% increase in cancer rates must seem mighty attractive when the land value plummets in goddamn craters. Like, well, there's a chance I get cancer, but I'm going to save a shit ton of money in the meantime. Yeah, I'll flip a coin on this one. The Landlord Harassment Channel. Who would win a war between Vermont and New Hampshire? That would be New Hampshire. It has twice as many people and far more guns. So Vermont is hardcore, but there are people running the state that want to make it considerably less hardcore. Next news story. Internet recoils as Biden talks of nurse doing things I don't think you learn in nursing school. So gross. Twitter users recoiled after President Biden gave intimate details of his treatment in a medical facility Tuesday. Biden was speaking about healthcare policy in Virginia Beach when he told a story about a nurse he said was named Pearl Nelson. She'd come in and do things I don't think you learn in nursing school, he said. Now, that's an old insinuation, an atomic era insinuation. Well, you didn't learn that one in charm school, did you, honey? It's an insinuation that there was some sort of sexual or quasi-sexual interaction going on here. She'd whisper in my ear. I couldn't understand, but she'd whisper, and she'd lean down and actually breathe on me to make sure there was a human connection, Biden continued. And then he goes on to say that for some odd reason, she gave him her pillow from home. And I'm thinking to myself, did she give you a little bit of a rub and tug or anything like that? Fiddle with your ass? Probably did. And here's the thing. Can you imagine if Donald Trump had said something comparable to this? Oh, it'd be like fireworks. It'd be calls for his impeachment. In fact, if you go back not that far in U.S. history, if you went back to, maybe the 2000s or even early 2010s, any individual within politics relating a story like this would have been ousted. They would have faced immediate calls from their own party to leave, because it would have been so optically inconceivable that would be a defensible thing to say that they would have been ousted. They would have been considered dead weight. But the Democratic Party is so lackluster right now and has such a birth of talent that they can't really afford to shove Joe under the bus yet. I think they're hoping that he dies or that he doesn't run again, that he's not crazy enough to launch a bid. You've got Marianne Williamson. Now you've got Robert F. Kennedy Jr. angling for a possible primary run against him. And he's a Kennedy, so he could actually gain some traction. I know that they'll attack him from the far left, but the far left has debilitated the party, so I don't know exactly what the attack would be worth. The Landlord Harassment Channel. I assume most of the gangs in Vermont are wannabes. Oh, no, there's some good old boys in Vermont. There are some stories with regards to those from back in the day. I remember one being related by a teacher that I had. I won't name which one because I think he might still be working at Mill River, about some Crips, actually, that came to the state fair, and they were trying to raise hell, and they got the shit beaten out of them by rednecks with baseball bats. Yes, Rutland is definitely redneck America. If you go to Burlington, it's mostly New York City gangs or gangs from Boston. A lot of drug trade and stuff. Rutland still has the good old boy mentality. Same with the new Northeast Kingdom. The 21.6 talk show, Morning Sticks. Always a pleasure to see you. Thank you very much. Where's the kitty, says Andrea Viola. Asleep right now, thankfully. It took a little bit of time to compel her to leave me the fuck alone so that I could do a live stream. Next news story. World is nearing peak population. Now, whether or not this ends up panning out remains to be seen. We're not sure because, of course, these projections are rarely 100% in their accuracy. Here's the thing. Assuming that the world population actually peaks in the next 15, 20 years roughly, and begins to decline. And it's not unlikely. It's just we're not 100% sure. It could go higher. It could peak earlier than that actually and begin falling. In some parts of the world, it already is. These projections rely upon a little bit of guesswork. Who gives a fucking shit is my question. I know that for economic reasons, having a population that declines is not a good thing. That's why countries like China has abandoned its two-child policy, formerly having abandoned its one-child policy, and is now trying to incentivize native growth. Japan's doing this. Parts of Europe have actually, including Denmark, have instituted programs like this. You could see the child tax credit being expanded by Trump and then front-ended by Biden as an attempt in the US, although it's not nearly enough. You see an attempt in Texas right now. There's a bill that's been proposed that would grant a significant state tax write-off, especially with regards to property taxes for people who reside there. They have a home and then they have kids and are married. It wouldn't apply to unmarried couples or adoptions. Therefore, homosexual couples are indirectly discriminated against by it. We'll see what the courts say with regards to that if it passes. And it does have a chance to pass. It's indirect in nature. It's coincidental. So I think that it should stand. I think anytime taxes are lower is a good time. That being said, if the world population stagnates and slowly declines, I don't see the problem. Most available reasonably arable land in the world is already occupied, minus what we can't spare, because you can't cut literally every forest down. You can't settle the entire Amazon basin, the entire Congolese basin, all of Borneo, etc. We're already making incursions into these areas that are flat out unacceptable. If you want to have forest regrowth and people able to own land so they can self-determine more easily, if you want them to have that land as a resource and an asset so that they're not crammed in like sardines, 15-minute city, commie block style, you can't endlessly increase the world population. It's impossible. It's physically not feasible. And so I have absolutely no problem whatsoever with the world population peaking and declining. In fact, a decline would probably be good for people. It'd be sort of like if, let's say that the world population stabilizes and then literally collapses. What ends up happening to land prices? Well, there's a shit ton more fallow land. People can buy more land. There are empty structures. The price of housing will go down. This will be taken advantage of by governments and authoritarians, but in a proper situation, if people really put the pedal to the metal, they can make out like bandits. Instead of living in an eighth of an acre city block, they'll be able to upgrade. They'll have a whole acre. They'll be able to farm and garden and so forth. There's no problem with that. What's the fucking problem? The world's already hypersaturated with people. We're driving numerous species to extinction. Our cities are already gigantic. Much of the potential fallow land is farmed. There's not a whole lot of room unless you want to exploit even more nature scenes and get rid of parks and get rid of little forests and national hiking trails and stuff like that. Unless you want to move up into the foothills and pack more people in, there's really nowhere else to go. Now, we already have housing crises in parts of the world. We're already having problems. We have border issues in multiple first world countries. What's the problem with the world population stabilizing at 10 or 11 billion and then maybe falling down? And by the way, I would speculate this too. That's because of something that's beyond carrying capacity. If we increased world efficiency, that is, we weren't throwing out a third of all the food that we grow, we made everything technological more efficient, if we made things more compact, if we did follow the WEF's like live in the pod model, we could probably cram 20 billion people into the world. But would they be comfortable? Would they live a dignified life and have any chance of upward mobility? No, they would not. They would be cramped into their micro apartment. They would think that they made it in life because they have a second bedroom. They would live on less food. They would travel less. They would do everything less other than bombard themselves with propaganda 1984 style. So the alternative is you simply manage a population decline and you recognize that there's something that goes beyond carrying capacity, which is comfort capacity. We already see the behavioral sink aspect of people's lives kicking in. We have hypermasculinized females. We have feminized males. They are spawning in urban areas due to pheromonal overload. This is my own personal theory. And people are not mice. People are not rats. They're reacting to it quicker under much less density than in Milgram's experiment, for example, because humans are more complex than rodents are. Humans are more psychologically complex. They need more room. We're not the same as a rodent. Rodents can live in 1,000, 10,000 member units in close proximity. They're perfectly fine. That's the kind of species they are. Humans need their own belongings. They need personal property. They need to have a place to roam. They need to have nature. Otherwise, they're nothing more than lemmings. There you go. We've hit comfort capacity in much of the world. We're approaching it in the rest of the world. There are very few places in the world where that capacity, as far as areas, again, that you would want to live in that are arable as opposed to the Sahara or something, there are very few places left that are unsettled. Well, you can build up. You can't really build out too much anymore. Or you can simply say, look, the world does not need to be packed endlessly full of more people like they are robots. We're perfect. I know it'll be damaging to the corporatists. Billionaires will lose, some investments. Pity them. So sad. People want to actually have land. They want to actually have a place they can call their own, and places that are collectively owned where they can wander around in the woods and the mountains and shit like that and not see skyscrapers. Oh my God, it's so terrible. Those greedy peasants out there. And I would definitely criticize Elon Musk for his belief that the incoming collapse of the world population is a huge problem. It might be for businesses. It's not a problem for humanity, not in any way, shape, or form. We were capable of attaining order and infrastructure and so forth decades and decades ago, when technology, by the way, was much less efficient and there were billions and billions less people in the world. The population of the world back then was like 3 billion people. We still had order. There were still big cities. You still had highways. You still had air travel. I'm not seeing the problem with having a few less people in the world. I just don't think that we should go Bill Gates mode and kill them or sterilize them. I think it's a natural process that once they've hit comfort capacity, the population growth stalls out, goes back down, and then it gently undulates forever, basically, unless there's a major disaster. That's all we have to do. Let nature take its course. The free market of evolution literally will fix it. Chem2425IA, happy Saturday. Mega Sea Monkey, good morning, Sticks. Would you go on Joe Rogan? I just found out that Hotep Jesus was on the podcast. Also, energy drinks are off. I'd go on Joe Rogan's experience. Yeah, of course I would. Doc Holliday, Mayor Pete isn't used to facing scrutiny. He's used to facing the headboard while biting holes in pillows. Is he the top or the bottom? Has he confirmed that? Considering how his husband looks, he's probably the top. He looks like Dracula. I mean, he doesn't really have to dress up much when it's Halloween, so there's some advantages to being him, I suppose. Next news story. Imagine you bought a new self-driving car. Imagine that you're fucking retarded, in other words. But you fall behind on loan payments. A new Ford patent envisions a future in which your car could drive itself away to the repo lot. Yes, I warned you about self-driving cars and that kind of automation. Many others did as well. That's a road, pardon the pun, that you do not want to drive down. I would never buy a self-driving car. I would encourage all of you never to have one, even if it's just a mode. And I'll get into why I think that'll become a thing. Don't get it from anyone. Don't get a Tesla self-driving car. Don't get a Ford self-driving car. Get an older model. I would rather get an old beater and have it rehabbed than buy a self-driving car. And I'll tell you why. First, you get lazy. And then if your self-driving car spazzes out and you have no self-driving replacement, that could be a problem. That's number one. Number two, there's really no added benefit other than in urban areas, you could reduce traffic congestion. That's the main benefit of self-driving cars, isn't it? It's just like in urban areas, an electric vehicle might be cheaper to operate, possibly depending on the situation, for short distance, intermediate distance travel, maybe from the burbs to the inner city. It's not really good for the American road trip or anything like that. Self-driving cars are a trap. And what they want to do is make your car autonomous so they can control it more. So the police can switch your car off if you're fleeing or if you're doing something. They suspect you of a crime. Maybe totally illegitimate, but they just press a button and your car automatically parks itself, locking you in so you can't fucking respond. You could have a hacker take over your car. and ram you into a goddamn tree, and there's no way to release it to manual so that you can actually steer away from the tree, and you get fucking assassinated. They already assassinate people by cutting their brake lines or pulling a Michael Hastings anyway, so, you know, by the way, look up that case. I wouldn't want to give them the added advantage of making it even easier. And also, driving can be enjoyable. Yeah, it can be monotonous, depending, but I'll stick with actual non-self-driving cars myself. Now, this would be easily countermeasured. You know, you're behind and your car has the ability to drive itself back to the repo lot. Well, you could, by the way, this would spawn many lawsuits with regards to medical emergencies and things like that. You could put a boot on the car to prevent it from going anywhere. You could potentially disable the system, causing damage to the vehicle in the process. No, thank you. I think that I'll stick with regular cars. I also with petrol-powered cars. I want to use gasoline. I'm not interested in EV. You know, I'm an environmentalist, a real one. I don't think that 12-year-olds mining lithium in the middle of China is really economically or environmentally sustainable. Strip mining in North Korea and now Iran, by the way. Look for more warmongering towards them because they just did an exploratory test and they found that they have a massive lithium supply, which is the second largest in the world. Right as EVs become a thing. What a goddamn coincidence that they found it exactly at that moment. Anyway, no thank you. I like older vehicles look better anyway, for the most part. I think there was a sweet spot around the 2000s when you get some computerization in vehicles, but it wasn't necessary for the vehicle's primary function. So it's really, it's an aid. It's an upgrade to vehicles, but it doesn't control your vehicle or anything like that. I think that's the sweet spot. That's why I love my Avalon back in Rutland. It was built right at the proper time where you're getting the computer display and shit like that, but it doesn't control any real aspect about the vehicle. It's just sort of helping you out, giving you aid. I'd rather get a vehicle older than that and have it fully refurbished at a chop shop or something than get a brand new vehicle at this point. Anyway, have you seen the fucking cost of new vehicles anyway? Yeah. Spend an entire year of your life to pay off a vehicle. No, thank you. No, I'd rather get a beater. I'd rather get an old rat rod that hasn't been maintained since 1978 and then go spend a few thousand making it run again or something like that. Let me see. Aussie's Robots, the feds controlling insurrectionist cars, lol. Yeah, for every benefit that you would gain from it, you'd gain 10 detriments. Drennan, Trump Warwick 24, make America clank again. Giga Mango Fanta. What amazes me is how far some pinko-laden creators like Historian channels on YouTube, Laserpig, Animarchy, etc. gleefully talk about Ukraine the way McCain talked about Iraq and Iran. Yeah, it was funny. The Libertarian Party was putting out that picture of McCain, you know, his coffin with his daughter there weeping at it and memeing that up earlier. I thought that was funny. He deserves it. Burger Time 72. What do you think Crowley would say about the state of the world currently and or what he would say about the current state of AI? He'd probably write a book saying he told you so and then make money off of it. Then he'd do some more heroin. Crowley was not necessarily the greatest occultist. He was very good at branding himself, however. He probably would find the degenerated state of the world funny more than anything else. He was, after all, a literal British spy for a while. Giga Mango Fanta, with history showing what happens when orgs like NATO pump other countries full of weapons and money steroids, a la Iraq in the 80s, what's to stop Zelensky from getting a big head and going full Saddam? Literally nothing, that's the problem. But you're not supposed to discuss that. That makes you a Putin-phile. Tor Theo, you're in the EU, which is banning non-EVs by 2035. No, they're banning the manufacture of non-EVs. That means absolutely nothing. Many states will ignore the rule, I assure you. And also, you've got to remember, I am still an American. So if all hell breaks loose in either continent, you know, I can be on the other continent with my family. So I've got bigger problems like them trying to shut down a bunch of Dutch farms, which is a doofus plan. Transylvanian 90, drive a manual. It might be able to remotely lock out, but it'll never physically be able to drive itself away unless they figure out a robot arm. Wasaibi, hi Sticks, the population stabilized before during the classical period to the Industrial Revolution, as there were about the same people in the world when Rome conquered Egypt to when Napoleon went there. We just learned to make more with less. True, technology has upgraded the ability of humans to expand beyond what would normally be habitable. This also happened in beyond antiquity. When humans learned to make fire and to store food to some semblance or degree, make skins and tools and things like that, their population density increased. You get towards the Copper Age, you start seeing settlements that were impossible for Stone Age people, for example, and then so on and so on forth. But that doesn't mean there isn't an absolute upper limit comfort capacity beyond which, when you go, people become so miserable, you end up with revolution, or you end up with a pandemic because density is too high, something like that. We shouldn't be trying to artificially pump the world full of more people. Let nature take its course. People fuck or they don't fuck. They have a kid or they don't have a kid. Let them decide for themselves. You can incentivize growth in areas that are still more empty. That's perfectly fine. As long as you shut off the immigration spigot, in fact, it can make sense. You can stabilize the population. You won't be able to raise it far beyond comfort capacity without people complaining. Mr. Wonderful, Ford just announced that defaulters' cars will self-drive back to the factory. Absolutely true story. Follow it up. We literally just covered that, yeah. Hence why you should never get a self-driving car. Fire down below. Bobby Kennedy, is thinking about running for president in 24. I would be very happy with this. It's a win-win with Trump v. Kennedy. Yeah, I'd have to see what his platform would be. I want more than just him being right like all of the rest of us were on Hong Kong certain medical issues. That's definitely commendable. I would point out that many others were right about them as well. Next news story. I'm not going to cover the news story. I'm going to give you a little bit of advice. Stop caring about Meghan Markle and so-called Prince Harry. I wasn't even going to talk about it. Like I'm violating my own rule here by even bringing this up. I am so goddamn fucking batshit tired, being driven insane by the legacy media astroturfing these retards, these fucking morons here, as though they were relevant. Now they're talking about, well, they got evicted from their cottage over in the UK. They're not even living in the UK. They're not part of the royal family anymore. Who gives a fucking goddamn shit? The British tabloids love it. US legacy media, which basically are tabloids, they love it. What does it matter? Who cares? What does this have to do with my life? Does it impact me in any meaningful manner? Does it impact the British public in any meaningful manner? Does literally anyone other than the direct parties involved get impacted in any way? Okay, Harry wrote a book with salacious details, some of which possibly are true, with regards to the royal family. Can I please posit something here with regards to the royal family? Did any of you think that the royal family over in the UK, inbred and insane as they are, really functioned in any way other than dysfunction? Did any of us believe that they were a normal, like a coddling, a loving family, and that like Queen Elizabeth wasn't the only one there other than Diana, who got killed for a reason? Did anyone other than them were normal or even semi-normal? Normal is you only have bulimia and substance abuse issues in the British royal family. Normal is you're probably not from within the family at all. You're one of the people they imported for slightly less inbred genetics. Or you happen to be a monarch from yesteryear like Queen Elizabeth, who remembers a time when they actually had a job and they were required to do it, like pre-tabloid, back when they had a more censored press, by the way. Who gives a fuck? These people complain about being in South Park and shit like that, which lampoons everyone of any note, basically. Who cares? Can I please stop seeing news reports? Can I stop being a libertarian just long enough to pass a law? No more news about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. Just stop talking about them. Make it a bannable offense on all social media. Can I just say that's the one thing I wouldn't agree with a libertarian platform on? I think that rule would be pretty good. Just ignore them. Ignore them. Hope that they go away. And it's mostly the legacy media. Like, people only talk about them when CNN releases some bombshell new report that sounds like something out of the Inquirer or the Weekly World News. Holy shit. So just some advice. Just don't talk about them. I don't want news tips about them. And I know that some people that don't like me will now troll me by sending me Harry and Meghan stuff, but I'm hoping that people won't torture me, so I do not deserve it. I am not that much a sinner. Sparky, I drive a 79 rusted out Datsun pickup and use a 40 Ford tractor. Work on them myself. Parts are readily available. Live in the middle of nowhere. Great. Yeah, well, I'm not really good with engineering and automotive repair and stuff like that. Like I could change a tire, but I can't do much else beyond that. So I think I'd like it a little bit more modern because I would be taking it to a store to get repaired and checked and stuff like that. But no, I wouldn't. I don't want a self-driving car. I'd rather have to learn how to maintain a 40s era tractor than get one. It's just insane. There's no real legitimate benefit to it unless you're in an inner city and you have to deal with big time traffic. Tortheo, thoughts on Texas incentivizing having kids like Hungary? I support the basic concept as a replacement for mass immigration. I think we need to stabilize the world population. You don't need it to rise, but you need it to stabilize and not drop off a cliff causing havoc. The way to do that is spur on native birth rates. Make sure that people are capable of actually, they can have a couple of kids and they don't have to worry about where their next hamburger is coming from. Very important for us Americans. Giga Mango Fanta, U.S. media is not tabloid sticks. We live in an era not of media, but of blatant propaganda outlets, a la Stalinization and Orwellian horror shows. Yeah, tabloid material. Salacious, often not true, usually brain dead. Transylvanian 90, theory, the royal family actually wants or even manufactures these scandals to keep itself in the news cycle. They like being gossip fodder. That's the other possibility, in which case you should ignore them twice as much. The Spence Fencer, for your information, British royal family are descended from Muhammad. I thought they're a bunch of Germans. Like they married into the family, and then you had hemophilia spread out from there because those royals all intermarried one another. So they're all like third cousins anyway. So I wonder why these people have medical issues and most of them die when they're children. Could it be because 4 subsequent generations of first cousins screwed each other? Yeah, imagine your parents were first cousins, and then you're first cousins with your husband or wife, and then in your marital bed on the first night, you're expected to screw and create an heir. Imagine how awkward that would be for a number of generations, especially when you get more and more deformed over time, mentally and physically in some cases. Giga Mango Fanta, Hollywood elitism and British incestual nonce drama needs to be yeeted into the sun or tarred and feathered to oblivion. Hashtag reject cry bullies. I mean, Jesus Christ. Those people have some weird fetishes. Next news story, U.S. condemns Israel's far-right minister's call for Palestinian town to be erased. Yes, this is Bezalel Smotrich. Bezalel Smotrich. Who also leads the far-right religious Zionism party. This is the party that wants imperialism within Israel. They go even beyond like the Netanyahu nationalism. They go off into the realm of, well, the whole region is ours, effectively a greater Israel policy. Said earlier on Wednesday that the Palestinian town of Huwara needs to be erased. And this went so far that even the U.S. government, which tends towards hefty amounts of praise for Israel, without which no politician can generally get elected at the national level, at least. It's too far beyond the pale even for them. They're condemning the comments. Normally you see the half-assed wiffle waffle sort of thing with U.S. politicians. So Israel decides to bulldoze a town and settle Jews there because of some, half-assed law or whatever. They say, well, you're not allowed to be here. This land is ours now unilaterally. And normally, a U.S. politician will say, well, we asked for calm and we asked for dialogue. And they send a diplomat over or something. And in the end, Israel bulldozes the town. But normally, Israeli ministers don't openly praise the concept of erasing the Palestinian people from settlements. They low-key it. They say, well, because of this obscure interpretation of a century-old piece of paper from the British Empire or something, we're entitled to this particular hill. And then they go in and they start erasing the Palestinians that are there and forcing them out. They normally don't talk so openly about the need to expand that policy because it's not a popular concept. By the way, the Israeli left is a weird goddamn juxtaposition. It's mainly the leftoids in Israel that oppose these policies. They tend to be the ones that are more skeptical of them and want a two-state solution. Yes, there are leftoids in this world that actually serve a useful function. Haven't seen that in the United States for a while now, have we? Let's see. Terry T, Morning Sticks. Happy Saturday, Clank Nation from Southeast Virginia. So yeah, we've finally found an Israeli minister within the government there that the U.S. will not only say, well, that's a little bit far, but outright condemn him. Smotrich becoming, God, one of the first people to actually gain that particular honor. Congratulations. You're so far out there that even the politicians in the United States who take sabbatical visits to the Wailing Wall, for photo ops mainly, I would note, will not touch you with a 9-foot pole. You've got to be really far out to alienate, especially to alienate even GOP members over the issue. That's when you know that you've gone too far. I wouldn't be surprised if he's forced to fucking resign for it. Faxinadu John, Sticks, what do you think the odds are now that January 6th footage is being mass scrutinized of Ashley Babbitt's killer being brought to justice? 0%, unfortunately. However, I do note that her mother got a standing ovation at CPAC. And by the way, tomorrow, I believe it is Trump takes the stage. Or is it today? Not 100% sure. Time zones are a bitch. Ozzy's Robots. Western culture is toxic at this point in history. The Overton window is absurdly left. Do you think this think this is having the opposite effect on traditional and Islamic countries, pushing them further right? There does tend to be an interplay there. Yeah, that's definitely true. Although I would note that some Islamic nations are liberalizing, including, oddly enough, Iran. Although they still crack down on protests and rape people in the prison cells and suppress them. It seems that they're having more and more problems suppressing things there. Unlike in Afghanistan, the Taliban has things pretty locked down there. Gigamango Fanta, gotta love the irony that I can't say that on YouTube. The obvious are currently showing with such moves, finding inspiration from the past a la National Socialists. Yeah, it is kind of funny, the imperialism that you see there, and I should probably qualify that. I have no problem with Israel existing as a nation. I do have a problem with them constantly intervening on their neighbors. It's a microcosm of really the US or Russia's world policing. It's the same shit. Bombing things in Syria, bombing things or hacking them in Iran, going into Palestine and forcing people who have lived on the same piece of land for centuries out of their homes. I can't support these things. It's not your land. Even if you claimed it in the civic manner, the people living there shouldn't lose their homes. You should just absorb them. But then that would lead to more Muslims being part of Israel and affect their elections. That's why they seek to avoid that. Null hypothesis, Dianne Feinstein, death becomes her. Yes, Dianne Feinstein hospitalized. SP Elite, you know what the word... Yes, I know what those words mean, and I realize that they do not actually have a racial connotation whatsoever. But YouTube, its AI system might pick that up as me saying a racial slur. So, yeah. Sorry. Desiccated Corpse. Israel is my greatest ally. Israel is a giant landing strip and dock for the United States military should we need it. But, when they're constantly peeving off most of the neighboring countries, it becomes a little bit untenable. It's sort of like how China has to occasionally rein in North Korea, or how Russia has to do that, by the way, with Belarus. Wisconsin residents illegally held hostage in their homes by Native American tribe. Yes, up in Wisconsin, there is, unfortunately, on Lac du Flambeau, band of Lake Superior, Chippewa, the tribe has elected illegal barricades on the only roads that lead to their homes, preventing residents from entering and leaving. The only way out of the reservation is over frozen lakes that are quickly melting with the coming spring. So yes, the town of Lac du Flambeau has been officially cut off from the world by people with no legitimate governing authority whatsoever. Here's my solution. Short term, because this is an illegal move and therefore cannot technically be legally enforced, you should destroy the barricades because they're not legal. They were not put up there by a proper authority with the right to put them there. Then you file a lawsuit when there's inevitably a dust-up. You'll have to show up in force to make sure that you're not shot at by the tribal sheriffs or whatever the fuck they want to call themselves. Longer term, I think that we should dissolve all tribal lands entirely. If people have native heritage and they've been granted land by the U.S. government explicitly under treaty with formerly extant parties, parcel the land up and give an equal share to every person that's part of that tribal group. and dissolve the tribal authorities completely. If I therefore am part Chippewa, part Cherokee, whatever, government has given this 1-million-acre tract of land to my tribe. There's 10,000 people in it. Parcel it up, give them each 100 acres. I can take that land and live on it. I can sell the land, et cetera, et cetera. It pertains to that treaty. There's no reason for the tribal authority. They never should have been represented as being governing bodies in the first place with the capability of action. Only individualism should matter in that sense. It's perfectly fine to grant them the land that was already granted to them. Parcel it up. No more Indian casinos, no more tribal reservations with absent drug laws, which is the one good thing, with failing schools and shit like that, because there is no state authority capable of overseeing the standards, massive rates of addiction. How can I ask something to people who'd be more apologistic towards Native groups? How are these groups of people helped by having 4 times the alcoholism rate or some insane shit, having drugs everywhere, desperate poverty, a massively high rape rate, by the way, high illiteracy rates? How is this helping any of the people that you claim to be so tear-jerked for? It's holding them back. They're effectively prisoners. They're on this reservation. They're not getting a proper education. Many of them have no future in life. So you know what they do? They take that government stipend, they go back to their trailer, and they get wasted every day, knowing that they've got their Budweiser at the end of the day, because there's no other possibility for them. I feel sorry for them more than anything else. Supposedly, I'm part Abenaki. I wouldn't want to live on a fucking tribal reservation. You crazy? Fuck that shit. If my Abenaki ancestor, his tribe got screwed over, and there's probably a legit reason for that, and it wasn't just the evil white people lording over us with their firewater. Burger Time 72, would you ever consider doing a show on Gavin McInnes' platform? I tried using his platform name, and YouTube told me to re-edit the post. Thoughts on him? I actually did an appearance back when he was still on YouTube on his show. That was years and years ago. Yeah, I'd do an appearance on Gavin's show. If he invited me on, he just has to contact me. Musically Assured Destruction. I will be representing Clankdom today at CPAC, and I am in the security line for Trump's speech. Clank. Yeah, try to, if you can get Trump to mention me, that'd be hilarious. Trump, have you heard of Clank? No, what's that? Is that new on the menu at McDonald's? Tim McGraw, I'm an Indian outlaw. Where's my tribal land? Yeah, exactly. And then the final news story, please don't send any more super chats because I will have to end at some point here. Although I am high energy today. I've got to make pasta Alfredo later. It's my first time making it, so I hope I don't fuck up the sauce. Giga Mango Fanta, what do you mean, Sticks? I am truly a native of this proud land. I hail from tribe Lisby, Warren clan, with my breakfast burrito, Martha Vineyard homeland. Yes, there will never be anything quite as cringe and funny as Elizabeth Warren being outed as being not only white, but about as white as you can get, while having contributed recipes to a 70s Cherokee cookbook, and they were crab cakes or something, and they had mayonnaise in them. That was so great. And then Warren's meme team, which became the meme accidentally. And I think that they were actually serious. They were actually paid for. She literally tried that in the 2016 election. She makes Hillary Clinton look like a savant. Last news story. Girls high school basketball team forfeits tournament rather than play against transgender player. A Vermont girls high school basketball team forfeited an out-of-state tournament after refusing to play against a team with a transgender player. Mid-Vermont Christian School was set to play Long Trail School on February 21st, but NVCS forfeited the game due to a transgender player on Long Trail's roster, according to the head of the school, Vicky Fogg. We withdrew from the tournament because we believe playing against an opponent with a biological male jeopardizes the fairness of the game and the safety of our players, Fogg said in a statement. Now, let me stop there. Here's my thought. I've got a daughter, of course. While homeschooling is always the best option, let's say that you have to choose between two options. You have a private school that's Christian, and as a non-Christian, of course, I think that praying before your test is normal. Praying before school in general is cringe. Would you rather have your kid, though, in the Christian school that, you know, apparently now has an understanding of biological science that public schools don't have, or the public school? Most public schools, not all of them. Probably the Christian school. You know, I guess at this point, I mean, it's sort of like a tale of two terrors situation or something like that. But I think that learning the reality of science is important. I think that, actually protecting your players, I'm not into sports, but if they're going to be playing a competitive sport, I think taking them into consideration makes sense. If you want to have a non-gendered league, like this is just basketball. We don't care if it's males or females on the team. That's perfectly fine. I would note that you would end up with 90% biological males on those teams. Just saying, there is a discrepancy there because biological males tend to be taller and they tend to have more muscle mass. That's just the way that it is. Just because a person is taking estrogen doesn't necessarily, it doesn't reduce their height. It doesn't make the 6'4" person less tall and make them average female height or something like that. It is effectively like giving performance enhancing drugs to certain members of these teams. Now, if you want to deny that to be the case and be woke, that's perfectly fine. Other people have the right to not participate with that. And this is the way to handle it. Simply don't participate. Let them think that they're taking a win by forfeit or something like that. That's perfectly fine. Do not participate with them. Simply shut it out, ignore it, scorn it, and say, look, I'm not playing that game. Enough is enough. Stop playing make-believe and fuck off, basically. The Defamation League. Since British royals are inbreds, I wonder how Queen Elizabeth lived to be so old. I mean, King Chuck definitely appears to be an inbred with those big-ass ears, but even he is pretty old. Sorry, tried sending before, but censorship. I think they're slightly less inbred than some members of the royals there in technically here in Europe. BW, honestly, and there's someone at the door, just a sec. All right, we've got the return of Baby here, so I'll have to cut this off now. But first, BW, honestly, do you think Repubs will be regional party in 10 years, with Gen Z voting for Dems 70%? That will change much as it has with other generations. Generations, when they're younger, tend to start off more liberal, move more conservative later. Also, the parties do change over time. So yes, I do have to go offline here because the baby is back and chuckling. So it's playtime, I think. That's about all.